All right, hello everyone. It's 11 o'clock. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Haley Deshane. I'm the events coordinator here at Eco Canada, and today's session is called Shifting Careers in Today's Environmental Workforce. So just a few housekeeping things before we get started. Want to ensure everyone can enjoy and participate in our session effectively. So all participants are muted, so please check your audio settings to ensure that you can hear us properly. If you are experiencing any technical issues, please use the chat function on the left-hand side of your screen and select the technician assistance and someone from vFairs will resolve it for you. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available on demand to you on this platform for 1 month after the event ends. Any questions that you have about the presentation or today's topic can be submitted through the chat box or question box, and we will have a dedicated time during the presentation to answer any questions from the audience. Then finally, we really want to know what you think about our webinars and how we can keep improving. So you'll be sent a short survey after the webinar ends. Please let us know what you think or if you have any comments or suggestions about the webinar. And now I would like to introduce you to our speaker. Joining us is Jenny Peters. Jenny is an economist with a PhD in economics from Texas A&M University. As the Labor Market Information (LMI) manager at Eco Canada, she is responsible for the management, execution, and delivery of environmental LMI projects, working with an army of professionals comprised of staff, consultants, strategic advisors, and subject matter experts. Before joining Eco Canada, Jenny applied her knowledge and skills in various roles and industries. She worked as a lecturer for 14 years at UC San Diego and Penn State University, teaching a wide range of economics courses and supervising student research projects. More recently, she managed labor market research initiatives, including economic modeling and reporting at Petro LMI Division of Energy Safety Canada, formerly the Petroleum Human Resources Council, and conducting economic research and analysis at Brown Economic Consulting. All right, Jenny, I'll pass it off to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Haley. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the opportunities that are available to people in the environmental space when it comes to their careers. Often people think that the opportunities are somewhat limited in the environmental space, but we've actually done quite a bit of research to show that there are lots of opportunities for people with many different types of backgrounds to find a space for themselves in environmental work. So let's start by talking a little bit about what we mean by environmental work. Let's go to the next slide. So from Eco Canada's perspective, we define the environmental workforce as any worker that drives or supports the goals of environmental protection, resource management, or sustainability. These are workers in any industry across Canada and a wide variety of different types of occupations. We've got two different types of environmental workers that we identify. One group of environmental workers, which we refer to as core environmental workers, have very specific environmental competencies, skills, and knowledge that they apply in their work on a daily basis. The other type of individual is an environmental goods and services sector worker. These are individuals who may or may not have any environmental competencies or skills or knowledge, but they're contributing to the overall goals and success of some sort of environmental goods and services organization. So, examples of workers in the core environmental workspace would include environmental engineers, hydrogeologists, sustainability specialists. Well, individuals in the environmental goods and services sector could involve those roles, but could also involve people who are in non-sustainability type roles, accountants, truck drivers, heavy equipment operators, laborers, administrative assistants, for example. what brings them all together in that space is that they are contributing to the success of an environmental goods and services organization. Let's move to the next slide. Another way that we classify environmental work is based on the type of specialization or field of work that the individual is partaking in. So we've got a number of different buckets of environmental work that we've identified. Environmental protection is the first category, and environmental protection includes areas such as air quality, water quality, waste management, site assessment and reclamation, and environmental health and safety. On the far right-hand side, we've got resource management, which includes all of the occupations that are involved in natural resource management, in fisheries and agriculture and forestry, wildlife protection, as well as energy, renewable energy, and energy efficiency workers. The environmental sustainability bucket includes workers who are focused on climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, but also research and development, communications and public awareness, education and training, and also policy and legislation as well. And then in the middle, we've got a couple of very specific types of environmental work. Impact assessment, which is the profession where individuals are going to be bringing together experts in a wide variety of different disciplines to help evaluate what impact, social, environmental, and cultural impact a particular large project, industrial project, is going to have in Canada. So those impact assessment professionals have some very unique skill sets that they bring to the table. And then in the middle, we've got the environmental management field, which really encompasses all different types of work. It could include people involved in resource management, environmental protection, environmental sustainability. In fact, they often require all of those different types of specializations. When we look at these specializations, we don't narrow it down so that an individual is only able to work in one of these spaces. An individual could clearly work in multiple spaces. For example, they could work in waste management related to renewable energy production, or they could work in policy and legislation related to fisheries and wildlife. So there's a wide variety of different combinations that people could have in terms of their fields of specialization. Lots of exciting, innovative opportunities for people to work in. Let's move to the next slide. So I'd like to start by talking a little bit about our forecast for environmental workers over the next 10 years. I'm going to look specifically at core environmental workers. And in this case, we estimate that there are about 453,700 core environmental workers right now in Canada in 2024. That's about 2% of Canada's workforce. Over the next 10 years, that is to 2033, we expect that there are going to be 28,100 new core environmental jobs created, and another 113,000 roughly of additional job openings for core environmental workers due to retirements. That's going to bring us up to a total of 141,140 net job openings for workers. Or if we think of that in terms of an annual average, that's about 14,000 net job openings for core environmental workers each year over the next 10 years. Let's move to the next slide. When we take a look at the distribution of core environmental workers, I'm sorry, this should be environmental workers overall, not just core environmental workers across Canada, we see that the distribution of environmental workers is reflective of the population of Canada, which means that the larger provinces like Ontario, Quebec, British Columbia, and Alberta have the largest numbers of environmental workers. But there are opportunities for environmental workers in all of the different regions across Canada. when we take a look at the bottom label, when we're looking at Alberta, for example, we see there are 224,000 environmental workers in 2024, and that's 9% of the overall workforce in Alberta. That's what we call our Enviro share, the proportion of workers that are doing environmental work in the workforce. Alberta has the highest Enviro share across Canada, which is sometimes surprising to people when they first see that number, but it really reflects the fact that there is a lot of environmental work in the oil and gas sector and in the mining sector, which are very well-established sectors in Alberta. Much of the work in the province of Quebec and Ontario, on the other hand, have a lot more to do with broad manufacturing and consulting and other types of activities in the environmental workforce, and they're related to different industries over there. Let's move to the next slide. So let's take a moment and think about what the hiring looks like for these different regions across Canada. And I'm going to bring your attention to the fourth column, the net job openings from 2024 to 2033. Again, if we take a look at these numbers and we think of those as a 10-year total, then we would say that in Ontario, we would expect there to be about 18,180 new net environmental jobs for workers across the province of Ontario each year for the next 10 years. Likewise, we'd see about 8,310 per year in Alberta, another 8,200 in British Columbia, and another 7,560 per year across Quebec as well. Let's move on to the next slide. If we take a look at the opportunities available by job specialization, we see that sustainability by far has the largest number of job opportunities related to that activity, followed by natural resource management and then fisheries and wildlife in Canada. In both of those industries, well, in fact, in all of those industries, we see that the retirement demand, the demand for, or the number of job openings available because of retirements, vastly outnumbers the new jobs created over the next little while. That tells us a couple of things about the jobs that are going to be made available over the next 10 years. One thing that it tells us is that because the retirees are largely going to be in middle or upper level jobs, so they've got lots of experience in their job over their lifetime, over their career, those job openings can often be in middle or senior management positions or more senior consulting positions, for example. So when we're looking at that from the perspective of a new graduate entering into the marketplace or somebody who's new to the job market, what that means is there are going to be a lot of job openings for the more experienced workers, perhaps not as many for the less experienced workers, but there are going to be opportunities once you find a job to move up quite quickly, because there's a lot of additional responsibility that's going to be placed on the workers at the lower levels of the organization with less experience. So it's a great opportunity in the sense that your career can move very quickly once you find yourself a good job. Let's move to the next slide. To give you a flavor of what types of industries are hiring environmental workers, we can take a look at, I've got 8 different industries identified in the next couple of slides. The top industry for employing environmental workers is professional, scientific, and technical services. That's the industry that includes engineering consulting companies, accounting firms, business consulting firms, accounting firms, law firms, as well as environmental consulting companies. And in that industry, we see that civil engineers are the most numerous in terms of the type of job that's hired in that industry. Civil engineers are often referred to also as environmental engineers. And then we also see other professional engineers are in high demand, as well as lawyers and Quebec notaries. The environmental sector is requiring a lot more in terms of legal expertise these days. So more and more lawyers are finding a role in the environmental space over the next 10 years. In public administration, we see 184,570 environmental workers in 2024. And those can range quite widely. A lot of those are workers who are in management positions in public administration. They could be policy analysts or other types of managers. But it also includes police officers and firefighters who are often in high demand for environmental work. In the construction sector, we've got home building and renovation managers, construction managers, and electricians, all at the top of the list in terms of environmental work, with 144,250 total environmental workers in 2024. And then in manufacturing, we've got manufacturing managers, construction millwrights and industrial mechanics, and supervisors in mineral and metal processing. All of these are doing environmental work. The supervisors in mineral and metal processing, for example, could be involved in EV battery production and processing of the minerals that are required for EV batteries. The construction millwrights and industrial mechanics are often involved in industrial activities, trying to make the processes more efficient. And then the manufacturing managers have to be aware of all of the environmental impacts of the facility that they're managing. Let's move to the next slide. I'm going to run through these ones a little bit more quickly, but we also have utilities, administrative and support waste management and remediation services, mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction, and agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting, demanding environmental workers. The types of workers, again, vary quite substantially across the different industries, with water and wastewater plant operators being then the highest demand for utilities, public works and maintenance laborers, and water and wastewater treatment plant operators, again, in the waste management and remediation services. Petroleum engineers come in at the top of the list for the mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction. And then managers in agriculture, forestry professionals, and forestry technologists and technicians are important for the agriculture and forestry and fishing and hunting sector. In terms of hiring for those industries, again, let's focus on the fourth column from the left, the net job openings to 2033. Again, we see professional, scientific, and technical services up at the top of the list for hiring, followed by public administration, construction, and manufacturing. We also see a couple of industries that weren't identified as top employers of environmental workers, but they are going to be hiring a number of environmental workers over the next 10 years. That includes the educational services sector, so that's universities and post-secondary institutions, a wide variety of different types of secondary schools, as well as training institutions. The transportation and warehousing sector, which includes things like pipelines and transportation of goods across the country by rail and by shipping and by land. And then wholesale trade, the overall distribution of the goods from business to business as well. We do see that a number of new jobs created in the agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting, and the mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction sectors, that's the second column from the left, are anticipated to fall over the next 10 years. We're going to have negative or a contraction in terms of new jobs. And then also in the manufacturing sector. In the first two cases, the agriculture and mining sectors, we're looking at a decrease, mainly because of a decrease in overall activity. In the manufacturing sector, we're observing a decrease in the number of new jobs created, primarily because the productivity of the workforce in the manufacturing sector has been increasing over the last little while. So there are more productive workers, so fewer workers are going to be hired over the next little while. Next slide. Talking about jobs in terms of the different types of occupations that we have for environmental workers. We'll start with the natural and applied sciences and related occupations. So that's a category that includes engineers, scientists, technologists and technicians, IT specialists. That has the most numerous number of environmental workers, 351,000 environmental workers in that job family in 2024. That's followed by the trades, transport, and equipment operators and related occupations. Those include skilled tradespeople and contractors and supervisors. Often they're doing work in terms of maintaining equipment and making sure that the construction of buildings and retrofitting of buildings is taking place to increase energy efficiency. And then we have business, finance, and administrative occupations also. That includes individuals who are doing health and safety work, logistics or supply chain work, human resources, and financial reporting, including greenhouse gas and ESG reporting. The occupations in education, law, and social and community and government services is an occupational group that includes professors at universities, lawyers, inspectors in various different roles, policy researchers, and firefighters and police officers. The occupations in manufacturing and utilities includes individuals like utilities managers, water and wastewater treatment operators, chemical manufacturing, and motor vehicle assembly, particularly the EV motor vehicle assembly. And then in the natural resources, agricultural and related production occupations, we have types of workers who include agricultural production workers, logging and forestry workers, forestry professionals, mining, and oil and gas drillers. So there's a wide variety of roles available for individuals of a variety of different backgrounds through occupational groups as well. Next slide. Looking at the employment forecast, again, the net job openings, we see that the natural and applied sciences and related occupations, those kind of STEM roles, the engineers, the scientists, the technologists and technicians and IT professionals are in most demand over the next 10 years, followed by the business, finance, and administrative occupations, and then the trades, transport, and equipment operators with 81,000 net job openings over the next 10 years. Next slide. We are expecting to see some shortages over the next 10 years in some of the important roles for environmental workers. I've got a bucket, 8 buckets of workers here that reflect where we're seeing or where we expect to see critical shortages. And they include in legislation and public administration jobs, a lot of different types of engineers, mechanical, chemical, mining, geological, petroleum, industrial and manufacturing, and metallurgical and materials engineers. In the home building and skills trade space, we've got home building and renovation managers, electricians. We've got natural policy researchers and administrative officers in the more social sciences space. In terms of technologists and technicians, civil engineering and electrical and electronics engineering technologists and technicians are in high demand and are likely to be in shortage. In terms of more occupations related to business, we've got professional occupations in business management consulting and occupations in advertising, marketing, and public relations. And then for skilled trades, we've got construction millwrights and industrial mechanics and welders and related machine operators in short supply over the next 10 years. Next slide. Over the next little bit of the presentation, I'd like to go through some more specifics in terms of environmental jobs or core environmental jobs in the variety of specializations that we've identified, and to talk a little bit about the background that people often have when they come into these roles, and to give you an opportunity to see what types of work are involved. So when we look at the air quality specialization, which is part of the environmental protection bucket, we have air quality engineers and air quality technicians and technologists as example occupations. For the engineers, they're often going to come from an engineering background, so it's environmental engineering or chemical or mechanical engineering. And a lot of their work is to review environmental assessments for industrial projects, and work on issues such as emissions controls, contaminant removal, and workplace ventilation. For the air quality technicians and technologists, they often come from a background in geographic information systems or meteorology or environmental studies, and they're going to monitor, assess, and report on ambient air quality. And they're also going to be particularly active when it comes to monitoring the impacts of environmental emergencies, such as fires or chemical spills. Next slide. In the water quality space, I've chosen a couple of related jobs: water and wastewater plant engineer and water quality technician. Similar to the engineers in the air quality space, you're probably going to have a civil, mechanical, or chemical engineering background. And your job is basically to oversee and operate the processes involved in treating, distributing, and collecting water and wastewater for different urban areas. For a water quality technician, you may have a background in environmental technology or chemistry or environmental science, and you're responsible for monitoring and operating those control systems that the engineers designed, making sure that water quality is safe, and performing a variety of technical duties like inspecting the equipment, sampling and monitoring the water, testing the water, and working with both groundwater and surface water. Next slide. Now, site assessment and remediation, that is an area of work that is actively engaged in taking old industrial projects and returning them to a natural state. So a couple of different main occupations in this space include remediation specialists and restoration biologists. The remediation specialist is going to be designing the actual remediation plans to clean up the site, and they're going to be selecting the best techniques for remediating the site, and they work with site assessors to determine how bad the pollution might be and what types of contamination are present. They're probably going to have some sort of background in soil science or hydrogeology or chemistry or environmental earth science. And they're going to be working on a wide variety of different projects. Could be in a city cleaning up after a gas station is closed, or it could be out in a rural area cleaning up after a mining site or an industrial chemical factory. So there's a lot of different opportunities there. And then restoration biologists, we have individuals with backgrounds in wildlife biology, conservation biology, or ecology. And basically, they're going to be looking at these projects, these remediation projects, from the perspective of returning the wildlife in both in flora and fauna to rebuild the ecosystems that have been damaged by any of the human activity in that area. Next slide. In the energy space, we've got a lot of different job opportunities available for people interested in energy efficiency or renewable energy. A couple of examples include a wind energy developer who's going to have more of a business type of background than some of these other jobs that we've been talking about. They may also be a specialist in regional planning or communications and marketing. The wind energy developer has a lot of different hats that they have to wear. They have to negotiate deals with the landowners where that wind energy farm is going to go. They have to choose the appropriate sites for those wind energy developments, and then they have to manage the facility design and construction. In the energy efficiency space, we see energy auditors come up a lot as jobs in demand for environmental work. And these are individuals who perform energy audits. Basically, they're going to assess how energy efficient a building is, and what sort of conservation activities could improve the energy efficiency in that building. They may have a background in chemical engineering, environmental engineering technology, or building science. So again, a wide variety of backgrounds. Next slide. In the fisheries and wildlife space, we are going to take a look at conservation officers and aquaculture production managers. Conservation officers are basically law enforcement professionals with the focus on making sure that environmental legislation is complied with. They do that through public outreach, awareness activities. They go out into the rural areas, and they make sure that any infractions have been investigated, and they enforce those regulations. They have the ability to arrest people, just like a police officer does. And they do that in the space of protecting wildlife, fisheries, and natural resources. So they're probably going to have a background in natural resource management or ecosystem management, or just specifically in law enforcement. For the aquaculture production manager, these are individuals who oversee fish and seafood farms. They make sure that the fish and seafood are healthy and sustainably produced. And then they make sure that the facility is operating at a profit, as well as making sure that it's applying all of the appropriate environmental regulations. These types of individuals might have a background in aquaculture science, ecology, or marine biology. Next slide. In the natural resource management space, that's the space where we include forestry professionals, we include agriculture professionals, we include individuals in water science or ocean science. I've put a couple of jobs here, the agronomist and the hydrologist, which are very important jobs in natural resource management. The agronomist is going to have a background in botany or agronomy or agricultural science, and they're basically going to research what sorts of factors, environmental and non-environmental, affect agricultural production. They come up with solutions to help farmers improve their crop yields and sustainability, and then they monitor how effective various agricultural practices are. A hydrologist is somebody who's got a background in earth science, hydrology, or water resources engineering, and their job is to study the dynamic nature of water. So basically how water moves around and what effects that movement has on the surrounding environment, including wildlife and fixed natural environment as well. Other sorts of jobs, if we go to the next slide, include jobs in sustainability. And so we've got, again, 5 different roles to go through here. Sustainability jobs could be more business related, or they could be more environmental or urban planning related. For example, the sustainability specialist is somebody who might have a background in business administration or sustainability policy or environmental studies. And their job is to make sure that their organizations are complying with environmental regulations. Also ensuring that their organizations are financially viable so that they can continue to operate, as well as socially responsible. They often interpret the environmental regulatory requirements and then develop strategies and programs for the organization to make sure that environmental concerns are taken care of. Environmental planners are individuals who develop short-term and long-term plans for land use in a wide variety of areas. They contribute to environmental impact assessments, and they're also involved in strategic commercial and industrial development. These are individuals who may have a background in urban and land use planning, or natural resource management, or geography. Next slide. In the education and training space, I've identified two jobs in demand. One is a sustainability trainer. The other is a sustainability educator. In both cases, the content that's being provided through the training or education is going to be related to sustainable business practices or sustainable practices as a whole. The difference comes in to who is being trained. So a sustainability trainer is going to be focusing on training, providing workshops and courses for business audiences. And they're going to be trying to address a wide variety of different learning styles and needs in the training that they're developing. They could have backgrounds in business or management or psychology, education, or public administration. A sustainability educator, on the other hand, is going to be a university or college professor who does research and teaches in specialized topics in sustainability, and they act as thought leaders in that space as well. For research and development, a couple of important roles that we've identified include biotechnologists and environmental chemists. Biotechnologists are individuals who find or select, manipulate, or modify organisms to produce strains uniquely suited to making a product or driving a process. So what does that mean? It means that they're going to take organisms, biological organisms, and try to use those to come up with innovative ways to solve environmental problems. So, for example, we can use organisms such as bacteria to clean up contaminated sites, or we can produce environmentally friendly raw materials through biotechnology. An environmental chemist is going to be looking at the chemical processes or the chemical properties of a wide variety of substances and look to improve environmental health and safety based on their knowledge of those substances. They look at how chemicals interact with the environment, what effect they have on the environment, and then they try to analyze and reduce the impact of human activity on the environment through chemistry. Again, environmental chemists are going to have a background in chemistry, chemical engineering, or environmental science, whereas a biotechnologist will have a background in biotechnology or biochemistry or microbiology. Couple more buckets to look at. We've got policy and legislation. Here I've chosen a couple of jobs related to the legislative or legal aspect of the work, including environmental lawyers and environmental enforcement officers. Environmental lawyers are basically lawyers that come out of law school, but again, they could have a background in environmental studies before going to law school, or in philosophy or sociology or business. It doesn't matter what their background is. What brings them all together is that they're representing clients related to clean technology, water pollution, climate change, and ecosystem protection. And then they advocate for regulations, balanced regulations regarding environmental concerns. An environmental enforcement officer is generally going to have a background in environmental science or environmental studies. And their job is to enforce the Fisheries Act and the Canadian Environmental Protection Act. So they go out and they conduct inspections of facilities and different types of industrial sites to verify whether they're complying with environmental legislation and to investigate cases where they observe violations. And last bucket we'll look at is communications and public awareness. Next slide. So here we might find an individual with a background in communications or media design or web marketing, acting as an environmental communications officer for an organization. And that again could be a company, could be government, could be a not-for-profit organization. But the idea is that the communications officer is disseminating information on environmental issues on behalf of the organization. They often engage in surveys and organize fundraising events, and then they develop awareness and outreach programs for the communities that they impact. And then I've got a naturalist type of job, which is an individual who's got a background in biology, outdoor recreation maybe, education, or ecotourism. And these are people who are experts in the natural history of the region that they're teaching about, including living things and non-living things, minerals, fossils, plants, and wildlife. And they often are involved in guiding tours, planning special events, writing for newsletters, television, or radio. I'd like to wrap up today's discussion with a brief introduction to some of the professional and personal skills that are in high demand in the environmental workspace. There are a couple of themes that we discover whenever we're going out and talking to people in the environmental space. And one is that environmental work is extremely innovative. It requires a lot of creativity. It requires a lot of teamwork, especially teams from multidisciplinary backgrounds. So we've got engineers working with production managers, working with communications officials, working with Indigenous relations specialists, and they all have to come together and work together as a team. So teamwork is really important. Business development is in high demand in the environmental space. A lot of organizations are startups, or they're trying to develop new innovative products. And so developing business, getting sales out there is important. Project management is another really important role. A lot of jobs in environmental work, or a lot of types of environmental work, are project-based work, which means that they have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they have a certain set of criteria that they have to meet in order to be successful. Project management skills help individuals engaged in that type of work understand the nature of projects and how they can most effectively make sure those projects are successful. And then we also have leadership and communication skills as high demand skills. Leadership in the sense that there are a lot of opportunities for people to be the first person in their organization to move an initiative in the environmental space forward. Sustainability officers are often the first ones in their organization. Nobody else has done that work before, and so they have to have a good leadership skills as well as communication skills in order to convey the importance of the environmental work that they're doing. So that wraps up my presentation for today. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, we have a few questions. So someone asks, what all skill sets are required for environmental sustainability jobs for someone who wants to shift their career into this field?
Okay, well, in terms of technical skills, an individual who's looking at sustainability work is going to want to be well versed in the different types of ESG and GHG emissions reporting protocols. There are a wide variety of different types of frameworks that can be used for reporting. And so being familiar with the variety and the purpose of those protocols or those frameworks is really important. Having a background in the nature of impact and emissions measurement is very helpful, as is the ability to work with multidisciplinary teams. Again, you're probably going to find that in the sustainability space, you're going to be working with operating or operations staff, you're going to be working with financial staff, you're going to be working with upper management, human resources. And so being able to work with a wide variety of different teams is important. And then I think probably the most important professional and personal skill is going to be the project management. Often these are short project type initiatives that are being introduced, and so being able to understand the project management lifespan is important for a sustainability professional as well.
Thank you. Someone else asked if you could give examples of the types of jobs in that sustainability specialization that would have the most job openings that you would know of.
I think a lot of the work in that space is in the business consulting space. These are individuals who would be specialists in ESG. They help other organizations to design their own programs. We also see a lot of need for greenhouse gas emissions verifiers and auditors in the sustainability space.
Awesome. Another person asked if you could give more details about the jobs in the public administration.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, in public administration, there are jobs in the kind of the Ottawa region where you're working for one of the large departments like Natural Resources Canada or Environment Canada. You could be working for the Department of Forestry or the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife. And you could be doing it from a scientific perspective. You could be doing it from a policy perspective. You could be doing it from an administrative perspective. The government hires a wide variety of different types of workers. They're trying to bring together a variety of different types of expertise. But it really depends on the department that you would be working with in terms of the types of jobs. But again, urban planners, police officers, firefighters are also public administration officials, as well as individuals who are working in legislation. So working on the legislative side of the spectrum.
Awesome. So Michael asks, what kind of opportunities are projected for people who are really keen on mixed method research?
Mixed method research. You know, I've got to be honest with you, I'm not entirely certain what the answer to that question is. Perhaps you can follow up with me at info@eco.ca. Just reach out and say, I want to talk to Jenny Peters, and we can discuss that a little bit further.
Thank you. Another person asks, they said that you showcased the number of new jobs that are expected to be available on a per province basis, and they were curious to know what the proportion of unemployment recent graduates are in comparison to the number of new jobs that are being made available.
Well, that's a really important question. Unfortunately, we haven't done the research to be able to answer that question. One of the challenges we find is that the environmental workforce is so diverse that we've got, in order to be able to answer that question fully, we'd have to basically assess the unemployment rates and the graduate rates for every type of program coming out of the university system. We have done recent research, however, looking at narrowly focused environmental programs, and we found that the employment rate for graduates in those programs ranges between about 85% and 93%. So the employment rate is quite high for individuals coming out of environmental programs, a little bit higher than we would find in other programs. So hopefully that's helpful.
Thanks. Sorry, lost my place. Louise asks, can you go into natural resource management without a science background?
You can. You're probably going to want to have some sort of policy background if you don't have a science background. Either that, or you could work in the natural resource management space with a business background if you're willing to work for one of the traditional industries, forestry, agriculture, oil and gas, for example, and work in that space.
Awesome. So we got another question asking if this report is something that they can have access to in order to see in each detail, each job title of interest that might not be included in this presentation.
Well, the report that I took the job forecast from is available for free on our website. It's available at www.eco.ca. It was published this past March, and it's basically a national forecast. We also have regional forecasts for Atlantic Canada, Ontario, and Quebec, available online as well. in terms of the specific job titles that I showed towards the end, all of that information was pulled from career profiles that we have available on our website for free as well. Again, just go into at eco.ca and check out career profiles, and you'll find, I think, about 150 or 160 different careers that are profiled on that website as well.
Thank you. Someone with a chemical engineering background who works in data science is wondering which of the job titles do you see opportunities for using data science and AI?
Well, I'd say pretty much anything that's got a technical aspect to it. Anytime we're trying to measure something, anytime we're trying to design something, anytime we're trying to monitor something, we're going to be involved in data collection, especially big data collection from sensors and equipment like that. Analyzing that data is going to be important. Also from the kind of the site remediation side of things, we find that there are a lot of individuals who are going to be taking measurements from drone captured videos to monitor what's going on. And then, of course, in the research and development space, we're going to have a lot of need for data analysts or people who are good with big data in order to be able to analyze the impact of the technology that's being developed.
Awesome. So someone is wondering what skills and certifications are required for someone that wants to shift from an IT project management into environmental project management.
The main things that you would want to investigate or explore in terms of building up your skill set is going to be an awareness of things like those emissions reduction protocols, the GHG monitoring protocols, the frameworks for ESG, being able to speak well about those things. You'll want to be very familiar with environmental legislation across Canada. That's a really big part of a lot of people's jobs, is interpreting and implementing responses to environmental legislation and environmental regulations. And then I think finally, again, making sure that you have got at least a working knowledge of the basics of ecology and hydrogeology and that sort of thing is going to be helpful for talking to or communicating with people in that space.
Thank you. Someone else asked if they were looking to pivot into the environmental sector with no experience in this era, what are some entry-level careers you would recommend most?
Entry-level careers with no experience. I think it's really going to depend on what sort of background or experience you do have. I know everybody's got a little bit of experience coming out of school or coming out of the workforce. If you're transitioning from experience in business administration, then you might want to focus on looking at sort of public administration jobs that involve oversight of the different types of environmental programs that they oversee. You could look, if you've got a background in engineering, there's a wide variety of different types of jobs. If you've got a background in business, again, you could look to developing your skill set in terms of a new startup company that is trying to build itself up, or to find a business development job in another type of area. So the answer to that question is really going to depend on what what your background was and what your interests are, because the two things are really going to want to align in terms of your decision going forward. If you're not interested in the work that you're doing, then you're not going to be happy in your job. So you want to make sure that you've got at least a base interest level in the type of work you're looking for.
Awesome. We have another question that asks if the projected decline in mining related jobs is being taken into consideration the potential of Canada's critical minerals industry over the next decade.
It's a really good question. The answer to that is a lot of the mining activity that we would foresee related to critical minerals is still at the planning stage. Still at the exploration stage, let me put it that way. So there are companies out there that are exploring for these resources and trying to put forward requests for permits in order to be able to actually start producing, to develop those resources and produce those resources. In Canada, due to a lot of the impact assessment requirements and other environmental regulations, it takes about 10 years to get a mine from the exploratory phase to the actual production phase. So while we see that there's a high demand for these critical minerals, we don't anticipate that the actual jobs on the ground for miners are going to grow over the next 10 years due to the lag in getting those critical mineral facilities up and running.
Awesome. One more. You mentioned something about mentorship during the presentation. Is this a free service and how can we access this?
Well, mentorship comes in a lot of different forms. One opportunity that's available to environmental professionals in training, those are people who apply for the EcoCanada EPT certification, is a mentorship opportunity where you can be matched to an individual who's working in a field that you would be interested in finding out more about. And this is it's an informal type of mentoring. You schedule it on your own schedule, and then you learn from that. In terms of informal mentoring, one of the things that I recommend is reaching out to people, whether it's through LinkedIn or going to networking events such as the types EcoCanada provides, or network events. I know that there are green city events across the country where you can go and meet other sustainability professionals. And then, basically just chatting them up and making connections and talking to people about what your interests are and what the work that they do and kind of developing your network that way. And I think that that's a good way to also develop a potential for mentoring.
Thanks so much, Jenny. To everyone who didn't get their questions answered, feel free to email the info@eco.ca email, and we will get back to you as soon as possible with the answers to your questions. Thanks to everyone who came. Our next webinar, Improve Your Resume with Training Solutions, is in 2 minutes, so make sure to check that out and check out all the booths at the Virtual Career Fair. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.